What's good, YouTube? I'm joined by my favorite Yu-Gi tuber who would never possibly betray me, Dzeeff.
Hey, what's up?
And we're here with a top 10, and you see two cards here. They're going to be honorable mentions, but this top 10 is going to be the top 10 commons ever released that are the most powerful. And I know that's kind of a term. Everybody kind of asks, well, what's the best card? What's the best card? So we're going to break it down through rarity, and we're going to start with common. So the rules for this, it had to be released as a common. Even though it could have other rarities, we're going to talk about the releases of the cards.
Yeah, the original printing had to be a common to make this list.
So you want to start off with Summoner Monk here?
Yeah, so Summoner Monk actually made a huge impact when it was released to the TCG. It's actually part of a ton of different OTKs. Most notably, if you had one Summoner Monk and two spells in hand, you could then do 8,000 damage. That was pretty ridiculous for the time, and it's been used in a whole bunch of stuff since then. It's never really, to my knowledge, it was almost immediately put to semi-limited and never came off of that. I think at one point it might have even been limited. It's just a really powerful generic card that can summon level 4s from the deck for basically nothing.
And then Super Rejuve is also in the honorable mentions because it honestly didn't break until Dragon Ruler format. And it would break over and over and over again, I think, if it were still here today. But I honestly think every single card in the top 10 is a better card overall than Super Rejuve. Super Rejuve kind of relies on a very specific type, which is Dragon decks. But also, I think it takes like something else in the game to break it that's also been banned, and were also really nutty cards. And then our final honorable mention here is the PerformaPal Pendulums. Damage Juggler's missing here. He would also be here. Honestly, Monkey Board deserves to be in the top 5, but our entire top 10 would have just been completely run over by the PerformaPals and also the PerforMages, but they all rely on each other too, and they all utilize each other. So a lot of our cards here are more stand-alone outside of like one or two within our top 10, and they all do their own thing on their own. So like, what makes Monkey Board broken is that Joker exists. Without Joker, Monkey's not broken. Plush Fire needs Damage Juggler to be super broken. It still could get like, Trick Clown and other really good cards. But overall, within this top 10, I do think Monkey Board deserves it, since it's just a one-card scale in a sense, but it's a one-card scale because of Joker. And it's undeniable. They definitely deserve to be honorable mentioned. But here, we start off our top 10 with one of DZ's favorite cards.
Yeah, so Unizombie, I was super pumped when this came out. When it first came out, before we had Shiranui Solitaire, it was just a card that basically could get rid of Mizuki from your deck. That set up a lot of plays. We saw that in a bunch of different decks, mainly the original Shiranui decks, because Unizombie Brilliant Fusion is ridiculous. Unizombie with one instant fusion is double Sideframe Lord Omega. That was just like crazy. This has been proven to be one of the most splashable cards in the game, pretty much, especially for these recent times when we see so many archetypal cards. This has been splashed into like Minerva Light Sworns. I've played it in Phantom Knights before. We've seen that pop up a couple times as well. You can just do so much with this. And then when Shiranui Solitaire came out, it made, because of Unizombie, Shiranui Solitaire was a one-card Sideframe Lord Omega, or any other level 8 Synchro monster. And that was just incredible. We're seeing this card do stuff in Skull Servants even. That deck has done pretty well, at least on a rogue level. But Unizombie only gets better with time. It's just one of my favorite cards of all time, and I want to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely, just enables the Synchro decks insanely, but it's also a graveyard utility that just pops off really hard. And number 9 is one of my own personal favorites that got me my win. It's Reasoning. Reasoning is insane. It breaks the game's mechanics in terms of you are just filling your graveyard and going until you hit a monster, and it bypasses every monster that cannot be normal summoned or special summoned by the effect of it. So like Infernoids keeps going, and it just has such utility in decks where you play different levels as well. And it definitely deserved to be hit at the time and put on the Forbidden/Limited list. But it is an insane card that just, it not only can give you a body, but for no cost like Monster Gate, it just utilities your deck and your graveyard, and it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we almost put Monster 8 on this list, and even though it has a guaranteed hit, unlike Reasoning, because they could call it right, Reasoning just had a lot more uses, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! We saw people play it in Cosmos initially. We even saw it pop up in Monarchs a few times for like regional topping deck lists. And Reasoning is just a lot more splashful because it doesn't require that cost. And in a lot of cases, the chance of your opponent guessing it right was actually just not as important as tributing a monster.
And then we have in our number 8 position.
Yeah, Fairy Tale Snow. This is, I think, the most recent addition to this entire list. This card was amazing when it first came out, but pretty much the only deck that could play it was Minerva. But now we've seen it pop up in Shiranui's. We've seen it pop up in Infernoids, most notably. Heck, I mean, pretty much every 60-card deck at this point is playing a couple copies of Fairy Tale Snow, even decks that you wouldn't think of. I've seen it pop up in Paleozoics, in 60-card Paleozoics, because it's just like the card that truly breaks that grass looks greener, because when you're getting rid of all those cards, it's awesome to have graveyard effects. But Fairy Tale Snow, as a card that you can summon multiple times a turn, multiple times a chain, it's level 4, it has great stats, and can book a moon your opponent's monsters. It's just one of the best level 4s printed ever.
I have to agree. I often say Unizombie and Snow are some of the best commons in the game that can be played now. And Fairy Tale Snow just earned her way onto the OCG Forbidden Limited list at 2. So the OCG sees the power of this card, and it definitely has earned its spot there at number 8. But in number 7, the infamous Upstart Goblin, the why would you give your opponent 1,000 life points? Well, just like Pot of Desires and people argued that being bad at first, this was argued bad as well, and then it just showed how consistent you can make decks. You have the option to only play 37 cards in a sense by just giving your opponent a few more life points, and that consistency in the deck was seen immediately, and its utility was insane in terms of, well, I'm going to get to my strategy faster, 7 out of 10 duels, because I'm trying to draw, and we're gonna just keep going. So I can get to other draw cards, I can play less cards than you in a sense. It's just so good to be able to play less cards than your opponent, at least at the time of Yu-Gi-Oh! That it wasn't 60 cards. But
yeah, and it was crazy too, because before Pot of Desires, this was one of the most polarizing cards. You have a ton of competitive players swearing by 3, and then you have a ton of casual and even mediocre players that are saying, well, I mean, it doesn't really matter because I just want better cards, or I just want more cards in my decks that I have possibility of drawing, because Upstart Goblin is just like a blank card, and you have people arguing like, well, if you don't see it, does it really affect you at all? And just not understanding the math of things. So before we saw Pot of Desires sort of separating the competitive from the casual players, Upstart Goblin really made that separation prevalent.
And then we have another one of your favorites in number 6, the Foolish Burial.
Yeah, Foolish Burial. Once again, another card that we got first in a structure deck, and man, this card made immediate impacts. This has popped up in more strategies than I can even count. I mean, it was sending plant monsters to the graveyard. It's been sending Burning Abyss and Shed All monsters to the graveyard. It's just one of the most versatile cards, and I mean, we just got Foolish Burial of Goods, and it's nowhere near as good, just because sending monsters to the graveyard, you can just trigger so many different effects. And once again, just like Unizombie, this is a card that only gets better with time. As we get more and more cards that want to be in the graveyard, which is pretty much the direction the game has been going the past 4 years, Foolish has just shown time and time again that it is a top-tier card and can pop up in multiple decks within the same format as a game changer, really.
And a card that works well with Foolish, but works well with anything that is a level 4 or tuner, Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion basically ended up breaking the game with Norden, but has always had utility all the way back to cards like Thousand Eye Restrict, being able to take a monster and then tribute for a Monarch, but we didn't see that too much back then, but I actually used to play that deck. But it's an amazing card that just gives you a monster on board, a body on board, and for the cost of 1,000, and that can be tribute fodder, but more lately, in combination with Norden, you're able to just use it. We actually saw it in Shadol format a bit. It could bring out Winda, and it's definitely Norden that helped break this card in the most, but we see it now. We have Theseus, we have Panzer Dragon to help make Infinity. It's had so many uses throughout time in competitive formats, and in more casual decks as well. Cosmo also could use the Panzer Dragon play, and as well as Monarchs in order to make Pallades.
Yeah, and we even saw this. I mean, you might not even believe it, but we saw this before Exceed Monsters came out. This was a pretty common pick to see in Karakuri Synchro decks because you could bring out Cybersaurus, which was the before Panzer Dragon came out, and you could use that to instantly make your level 8 Synchro and then start all of your Synchro plays. This card has just popped up in pretty much every format since Synchro Summons.
And at number 4, one of Billy Brake's favorite cards, Rescue Cat.
Yeah, Rescue Cat is incredible. We just got the errata announced, and it's confirmed to be coming to the TCG as far as just being in the pack. We don't know if it'll come off the ban list. But, man, when this card was first around, or I guess by the end of its career, when Synchros were around, this card was just incredible. Like I said, with that Summoner Monk play earlier, that was done with Rescue Cat. So the nutty play was going Cold Wave on your opponent, summoning Summoner Monk, ditching 2 spells to get another Summoner Monk, and then the Rescue Cat, you would summon 2 X-Saber Air Balloons from the deck that were level 3 Beast Tuners. You'd make 2 Dark Strike Fighter, attack for 2 2600 damage, and then tribute both of them off to do the finishing 8000. For that time period, that was just ridiculous, and definitely when this card was banned, it deserved it for sure.
Yeah, Rescue Cat, it looks real cute, but man, did it ruin a lot of players' days. And in number 3, we have Trap DUSTSHOOT, perhaps one of the best, most cost-free cards that was just able to flip up. The restriction is that your opponent has to have 4 or more cards in his or her hand, but during the time that this was playable for the most part, I think for the entire time, your opponent started with 6 cards on their opening turn. So it was never too hard for your opponent to have 4 cards in hand, and if they didn't, they were typically overextending for a majority of this card's life too. And we saw it really just start kicking off, I believe, people teched it during GOAT format, but it didn't exist so much, and that's why you see a lot of people tend to omit it from GOAT format, but in Troop Dupe format, man, did this run rampant.
Yeah, it was just like one of the dumbest cards going first because it was only, I mean, it was good in like turn 2 and 3, but it was mainly just like a turn 1 total blowout. And then after that, it just wasn't as good. I mean, you get to like turn 4 or 5 when you have less cards in hand, it just doesn't do as much. And I think in actually one of the Konami articles, they wrote that's why they banned it, is just because like it was such an amazingly broken card going first. But outside of that, it was just like a total dead draw, and they just didn't want those types of cards in the game.
And in our number 2 slot, which I actually didn't have loaded in my XSplit scene, is Sixth Sense, one of the cards to last the least amount of time in the entire game. You want to take this one?
Yeah, so Sixth Sense was crazy because it was in the OCG for so long, and it was banned in the OCG, but they had it way before we did. I don't want to say a decade, but I'm like pretty sure it was a decade. And then we got it in Yu-Gi-Oh! At a time when a graveyard deck, one of the best graveyard decks, Dragon Rulers, was at its, well, not full power because we didn't have baby rulers, but it was basically the best deck of that format, even after the babies were banned. And we got Sixth Sense, and it was like, this is an instant win button because you flip it, you call 5 or 6, and either you're drawing a billion cards or you're milling a bunch of Dragon Rulers. It was just an easy win-win, and I know this was like one of the first cards that people agreed to do a gentleman's agreement and sided out, and some people didn't do that, but it was Sixth Sense and like Return from a Different Dimension that were sided out a lot to make the game more fair. But anytime you have like players siding out a card to make the game more fair, that's like a pretty telling sign that the card is probably not allowed to be in the game.
Billy often actually says for Dragon Ruler format, it's correct to call 3 and 4 because then you can mill up to 5 and 6 and utilize your graveyard even better. He basically said, don't be greedy, go with 3 or 4 because if you're drawing those amounts anyway, you're super fine, and then milling 5 and 6 is just broken.
Yeah, that was a crazy debate too, because it's like when else in Yu-Gi-Oh have we debated like whether or not it's better to draw 3 or 4 cards or to draw 5 and 6 cards or like mill 5 or 6 cards. It's just like a weird discussion that never has happened again.
And then we have in our number 1 spot, you've probably already guessed it because it hasn't popped up yet, Vanity's Emptiness, somehow still in the game at 1. So many people want to see it go, yet it's still here all the way back from STBL. It stops your opponent basically from special summoning monsters. It stops yourself as well, but it's a trap card, so you can activate it at your convenience. Continuous, stays up on the field. Not a one-turn thing like Dimensional Barrier, and it doesn't have any kind of restriction because it just stops everything. And I would call this probably in the top 10 cards of the game, period. And it's crazy. It didn't really show up until Dragon Ruler format, it seems.
Yeah, it didn't show up for years until Patrick Hoban won the WCQ. I think he was main decking 2 of this. I don't think he was main decking 3. But it's such a weird card because once again, it's like DUSTSHOOT, where it's like good going first, but not so good going second, because you want an established board to flip it up. So it has like not restrictions on the card itself, but you really want to have a board when you flip this. But as decks became more consistent, this card just became ridiculous. Then you have, and I think the pinnacle of this card was in Shaddoll and BA format when those cards first came out in Duelist Alliance, and everyone was just playing triple emptiness in pretty much every deck that they could get their hands on. And it just truly became one of the best counters to cards like Graph and Seer, and mainly Shaddoll Fusion as well, or Soul Charge. Just all these cards shut down my emptiness. You can establish your own board and then prevent your opponent from doing it at all. Just an insane card.
So what did you guys think of this top 10? Definitely one of the more interesting topics. I think we'll be hitting rares, super rares, ultra rares, and secrets. Tell me which list you would like to see next. I think we'll just go up the ladder, though, and do rares next. But tell me what you guys thought of this list, where you would have put Monkey Board, or which cards you would have put in here, Damage Juggler, Plush Fire, etc. And did we miss anything outside of all those? What did we miss putting in here? Let us know in the comment section below. Give us a like if you enjoyed this one. Be sure to check out Dzeeff's channel, which will be linked here right now.